Hello, I'm Alan Holtham. Welcome to this Buyer's Guide to the Lathe. Now, if you're thinking about buying a lathe, you've had a look round, you probably realise by now there's a huge range of different models out there, different prices, different specifications. It's very easy to get confused. This guide will help you choose the right model. But beware, wood turning is seriously addictive. Buying the lathe is just the start of a new and pleasurable hobby. But you don't have to spend a fortune to get started. Before we go any further though, let's just have a look at the main components of the lathe and get familiar with their names. This is the headstock which carries the main spindle. Now, the spindle is powered from the electric motor through a series of stepped pulleys to give us some speed variation for different diameters of work. Although on top of the range models, this speed variation is achieved electronically. Now, the headstock may be either fixed or on some models, by slackening off underneath, it may swing round to give us bigger capacity for turning bowls. The bed can be tubes, can be solid bars, or it can be a flat casting. At this end, we have the tailstock used for holding work between centres. Poppet barrel moves in and out on this hand wheel. The tool rest moves up and down the bed as well, locks in any position, and you can also raise and lower the tool rest itself. The whole lathe may be supplied for bench mounting, or you can also buy an optional stand. Now, the two capacities you need to think about when you're buying a lathe. The distance between centres, which is the maximum distance here, which dictates the longest workpiece you can turn, and also what we call the swing, which is the distance from the spindle to the bed, and obviously determines the biggest piece of work you can turn over the bed. There are a lot of very cheap lathes on the market. They all look the same, and actually some of them seem to represent quite good value for money. But there's a definite correlation here, perhaps more so in lathes than any other machine, between what you pay for and what you get. Many of these actually come with a leg stand and may even incorporate a mechanical variable speed drive as well, a feature normally reserved for top of the range machines. All is not as it seems though. If you take the cover off the headstock, you can see straight away there's nowhere near as much spread on the bearings, nowhere near as much you would think. The bearings are there and there. This pulley overhangs the main spindle by a huge amount, putting leverage on the spindle. This is surely going to introduce vibration when you're turning, particularly on bigger items. This mechanical variable speed works by moving the two halves of the pulley. This arrangement is very noisy and also shreds belt at an incredible rate. You'll soon be changing them. The castings on these lathes are very poor quality, very soft and prone to breaking. They are very much a beginner's lathe, enough just to get you started. But if you progress with your turning much beyond the very basic, you'll quickly outgrow them. Record Power concentrate their efforts on the quality side of the equation, producing a comprehensive range of lathes to suit all ambitions and abilities. And you'll find for not very much more money than one of the budget machines, you can actually get something that's a lot better made. Now, for serious work, you want plenty of weight to damp down vibration, because this is a wood turner's worst enemy. So, you want strong, rigid castings. You want a strong, rigid bed. You want a smooth drive system coupled to the motor. And for long turning sessions, the motor needs to be really smooth and quiet. I've just mentioned vibration, so build quality is the key to getting a good finish straight off the tool. A Record Power lathes are all produced on the most modern CNC machinery, so the quality is totally consistent, unlike a lot of other manufacturers who don't have this facility, and the quality of their machines may vary. You may get a good one, you may not. Record Power lathes all feature a substantial grey iron headstock casting with loads of spread on the bearings, as you can see here. Front bearing, back bearing, loads of spread between them. That minimises any vibration when you're turning big diameter work. Look on this casting from a CL3 or a CL4 machine. The front bearing has been replaced by a long tapered bronze bearing. This gives huge amounts of support for the big diameter work these lathes are capable of turning. In order to cope with a variety of different workpiece diameters, we need to be able to select a range of different speeds. On these machines, there's either a 4 or 5-step pulley, although on some of them there's also an electronic speed control. Now it's dead easy to change the speed. You just release the hinged motor platform. The motor will then just hinge up forwards, and we can select whichever speed we want by sliding the belt across, then release the motor, relock the platform, and you're ready to go. Now have a look at the belt. On these machines it's what we call a poly V belt. It's a flat belt with a series of little tiny V belts joined together. This gives really positive power transmission, but what's important, there's no join. It's not like one of the old lumpy V belts which vibrates as it runs through the machine. This one is dead smooth. The motor needs to be at least 1/3 horsepower, although for big heavier turning you will need quite a bit more power. Also, the controls need to be easily accessible. The tailstock is another important feature of the lathe. This too needs to be really strong and rigid. You need to be able to move it easily along the bed and then lock it quickly and easily, preferably using a cam lock like this. Another important part of the tailstock is the poppet barrel needs to be bored all the way through. This then allows you to knock out the centres using a rod. And also you can use the tailstock for long hole boring for lamps. You need plenty of travel on the poppet barrel. Just wind the handle. We need lots of movement here. It needs to lock quickly and simply with a top lever like that. The tool rest itself needs to be equally easy to move with a big range of movement to cope with different diameters. You need to be able to lock it quickly, again with a cam lock preferably, and you need to be able to raise and lower the tool rest itself and again quickly lock that in position. Another important feature to look for when you're buying a lathe is to get one that has Morse taper fittings. This is a Morse taper. You can see on this centre, very slightly tapered. This matches a taper inside the spindle. Just push it in place and it locks. It's as simple as that. So you can get a variety of different sizes of centres all to fit in so easily. Same arrangement on the tailstock as well. You can replace the dead centre with a revolving centre. And you can replace any of the centres with a range of other accessories like a drill chuck. And because it's the same Morse taper on headstock and tailstock, you can use the same fittings either end. The spindle nose is threaded to take a wide range of screw-on accessories. On the majority of record lathes, the spindle nose thread is 3/4 by 16 TPI, which seems to have become accepted as the industry standard. The real advantage of this is you can take all your accessories with you if you upgrade your lathe later on. I've already touched briefly on the problems caused by vibration. To a large extent, these can be overcome if you buy a good quality heavyweight lathe. But what you mount it on makes a real difference as well. All the lathes in the record range are designed for bench mounting, but you can also buy an optional leg stand. This varies from a set of simple tubular legs to a more comprehensive affair. If you buy a stand like this, you can fit a shelf on the top to take your tools. Makes it much handier for working. Or you can fit a shelf underneath for storing all your timber. If you're interested in turning bowls, the capacity over the bed, the swing is obviously important to you, this distance. Now, in the past, if you wanted to turn a large bowl, the spindle of the lathe used to extend through to this end, and we could turn on this end where we're not restricted by the bed, just have a separate bowl turning rest. The only snag with this is we had to have a left-hand thread on all the chucks, so you had to buy a left and a right-hand thread, and also you're effectively turning left-handed, which is very awkward. The modern solution is to have a lathe with a swinging headstock. Just slackening off underneath allows you to swing the head right the way around or lock it in any position. This has several real advantages. If you're trying to turn a bowl over the lathe with the headstock fixed, you find the long tool handles get in the way of the bed. Very awkward to turn. With a swing head machine, all you have to do, slacken off, turn the head off a few degrees, and now you can work off the main tool rest, but loads of free access for tool handles. It's much easier to work with a swinging head. This is a real advantage. For turning really big bowls and to maximise the capacity of the lathe, you may need to buy an optional bowl turning rest. This just bolts onto the end of the lathe, and then you can swing the head right the way round, lock it up tight, swing the bowl turning rest into position, and now you can turn large diameter bowls with no restriction whatsoever. There's another advantage to a swing head arrangement like this as well. Quite often, if you've got a small workshop or you're short of space, the lathe has to go in a corner up against the wall. It's then often very difficult to work, it's very awkward. With this head, you can slacken off, slide it along the bed and work further down. It's a much better arrangement. As you progress with your turning and your skills improve, you may want to buy a few accessories to maximise the potential of the machine. They keep this really simple to start with, but it is important there's a comprehensive range to buy into and Record produce just such a range. There are different turning tools, chucks and holding devices, different centres, and also a range of finishing materials for polishing on the lathe. Now, Record Power also have a policy of continually improving and updating their machines. Where possible, these upgrades can be retrofitted to older machines. So, if you've got a machine with the old style locking handles for the tool rest and the tailstock, you can replace this with a new cam lock system. The same thing on the speed control. If you've got a machine with the old step pulleys, you can replace this with electronic speed control. So you can see with a Record Power lathe, you're very unlikely to have to replace it. You can always update it.